CPAC.com.
So, starting with Brooklyn Otaku.
Okay, let me just get these questions pulled up here. So let me just get this out of the way here. How did you get into voice acting?
That's sort of a long story.
Okay.
I talk about it at length on my podcast. I have a podcast on voice acting called Voice Acting Master. It's at voiceactingmaster.com. And actually I take episode 4 and 5 of the podcast. I talk about how I got into voice acting. But in a nutshell, I was working as a theater actor in New York City. And a friend of mine at a summer theater festival in Massachusetts, an acting friend of mine caught me watching some anime, asked me if I was interested in auditioning for the anime dubs in New York, at the studio he was working at. I initially said no, because I didn't think the dubs were very good and I wasn't very interested. But then I realized that all the shows I had grown up with as a child had been dubbed. And so I wanted that introduction to be as good as possible for other people. So I took him up on his offer later and said, please put me in touch. They wanted a demo tape. I didn't really have one, but I was producing a radio theater company in grad school. I was going to Columbia for grad school in acting. So I sent them my radio play, which was totally the wrong thing to send. But obviously they didn't think I totally sucked. And about 2 weeks later, they called me in to audition for a show, and that was Slayers. There was a little small part by the name of Prince Hallis that I auditioned for. I guess I didn't totally suck on that either, because then they called me back and to audition for Zelgadis, as they were replacing the voice actor for Zelgadis. And so I got hired as Zelgadis, and it sort of took off from there.
Next up, Cosplay NYC.
What has been your favorite role so far?
My favorite role? Well, that's a tough question, because while most actors will say they have a favorite role because they like playing that certain type of character, I'm different in that I don't really care which type of character I play. I'm far more interested in the story and whether I think the story is interesting. So I would much rather play a small character in a really good story than the main character in a story that was awful, because that's just not appealing to me. It's not satisfying. So usually when people ask me, what was my favorite character to play, I will cheat and I will say Tsume from Wolf's Rain and Turnip Head, Prince Turnip from Howl's Moving Castle. Now Tsume is sort of deep and dark and brooding. I play those characters a lot. So it's not that Tsume was some radically new character for me to play, but the show Wolf's Rain was so sophisticated and I was so excited to work on a project of that caliber. And I was so excited to work with the people in the production team, because it was mostly the same production team that had worked on Cowboy Bebop, that I was very excited, and I'm very proud of my work in that show. Same with Howl's Moving Castle. I had wanted to work on a Miyazaki film for a very long time. But there aren't many parts in Miyazaki films for voices like mine, because Miyazaki's characters tend to either be very young kids, sort of 12 and younger, or they tend to be older father, grandfather, grandmother type figures. There aren't many guys in their 20s and 30s in Miyazaki films, until Howl's Moving Castle came along, where there's a bunch of them. So that was sort of exciting. So yes, I'm usually much more interested, my fetish tends to be for the storytelling, not necessarily for individual characters.
Next up is the student.
Have you ever been sought after for a role? Like specifically, hey, we want you for this role?
Yeah, I have. It's rare. It's very rare. Sometimes what will happen is a producer will be doing a show and they will contact an agent and say, we think your actor might be good for this part. So sometimes agents get requests where they say, could you have someone read for this part? What is ironic is often that's not who gets cast. It's funny, like they have an idea of who they want, but it turns out that's not who they really want. But yeah, I have been requested. There have been times, I think I was sort of requested for Chobits, for Hideki, if I remember correctly. They were trying to think of who they wanted to play Hideki and they said, hey, would you be willing to work on Shoguns? And so I said yes, but that's very rare, and that only happened because I had already proven myself as an actor in many other shows. And so they said, we think this is what you're for. Fortunately, I've gotten to a level with producers in anime that they trust my judgment about things. There are certain animation studios or production studios of anime where I will come to audition for them, and they will say, well, we were thinking of you for this character, what do you think, Crispin? It's gotten, with some studios it's gotten to that point, but it's been 14 years of me working no, more than that. It's been like almost 20 years now of me working in anime so that they trust my instincts on stuff. I have a proven record of things. And so they'll say, we were thinking of you for this character. And I'll go, yeah, you could do that, but then who are you going to get to play that character? So I've almost become like a casting director with them. And I'll say, I think you're going to like me better here, and instead cast him there, and she should go there. You know, it becomes a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle to put everybody together. But that's very rare, and only in anime. That doesn't happen in video games or in domestic animation.
Read around the magazine.
What voice actors inspired you to go into this business?
No voice actors inspired me, actually.
Really?
I started out as a theatrical actor, and when I was young, my hero was Gene Kelly, because he was an actor, a singer, and a dancer. He was a triple threat, and that's what I wanted to be. And I really liked Gene Kelly because he had a very athletic style of dance, and so I thought he was really cool. So that's what I was doing. I was pursuing a theater career. I'd gone to grad school in New York at Columbia for theater. I was pursuing theater both on Broadway and off Broadway and regionally. It never occurred to me to be a voice actor. That only came once I rediscovered my love of anime when I was in grad school, and then this opportunity sort of showed itself. And then I realized it was sort of a perfect fit. And my inspiration was not an actor, but a show. There was a show I had seen, The Vision of Escaflowne, and the show was so inspiring to me, and I really wanted it to have a good dub, that I decided I would get into the industry to build up my resume so that I could possibly audition for the show. And I remember when it was coming through the pipeline, I had already done a couple of shows here in New York. I'd worked on Slayers, Revolutionary Girl Utena. I think we'd started working on Irresponsible Captain Tyler, and I contacted the producers in LA who were working on Escaflowne, and I said, please, 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 send Escaflowne to us here in New York, and I promise it'll get a good dub. But they were overwhelmed, and they sent it to Canada instead, and they dubbed it up there. But it was all about the shows and the stories. It wasn't about actors. I didn't really become aware of voice actors until I started becoming a voice actor and working on stuff. Then I started listening with a more critical ear to certain things. But if there was any voice actors that probably inspired me, it was probably the voice actors from the old animated version of The Hobbit. The Rankin Bass production of The Hobbit, which was done in the late 70s, I believe, was a movie very near and dear to my heart. And the voices from that movie have been an indelible part of my childhood. And actually, one of the great compliments I got from someone once is they said that they thought that I was a young Hans Conried. Hans Conried played Captain Hook in the original Disney Peter Pan, and he played Thorin Oakenshield in the Rankin Bass version of The Hobbit. And so I was like, I will be Thorin, that works for me. So, but yeah, I mean, the voices in that Hobbit, especially Brother Theodore playing Gollum, he's absolutely terrifying. Those performances probably inspired me, but I didn't even know who they were back then. It wasn't until much later when I was working as a voice actor that I started becoming aware of voice actors as such.
What was your first contact with anime or animation in general that really inspired you, that sparked that love for it?
Well, when I was young, I always loved cartoons. In fact, when I was 6 years old, every day I would come home from school and I would turn on the TV and watch cartoons. And back then, the afternoon cartoons tended to be things like Tom and Jerry and Woody Woodpecker, and I loved Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, and all that stuff. And I remember my dad coming in when I was 6 years old, and yelling at me and saying, Crispin, when are you going to stop watching all these damn cartoons? Now, he was probably yelling at me because I wasn't doing my homework. It probably had nothing to do with cartoons. It probably had the fact that I would watch cartoons and not do my homework. But I remember at 6 years old making a promise to myself that when I became an adult, I would still like cartoons. I have lived up to that promise. But as I grew older and started hitting high school, I started looking back on the cartoons that I loved the most. And they all tended to be Japanese. I didn't know it at the time, but my favorite cartoons were things like Speed Racer. That was the first anime I saw. And then Battle of the Planets, Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. Then Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato. And then after that, Voltron, both the lions and the vehicles, and eventually up to Robotech. And when Robotech was airing on TV, that's when I was old enough to realize, oh, this comes from another country. Like, it didn't occur to me that animation came from different countries. And when I figured out that, oh, Robotech is from Japan, that's why it feels so different from all the American cartoons, then I was able to sort of look back through my childhood and go, oh wow, all my favorite cartoons were Japanese. There's something going on here. So it was sort of with that retrospective look that I was able to understand, I have a fascination with Japanese animation. I should probably pursue this.
Cosplay NYC.
So us being a cosplay magazine, how do you feel when you see like your fans like today at CPAC dressed as some of the voices that you portray?
Well, I'm always impressed by a good, I want to say seamstress, but that's female, good clothing skills. It's always impressive to me when somebody can put a lot of effort and love and care into their costumes. I don't really cosplay myself. I found that I only did it once when I was first working on Hellsing. Pioneer, which was the licensing company at the time, asked me if I would be willing to cosplay as my character Alucard and go to Anime Expo and to San Diego Comic-Con in costume. And I said, well, if you build the costume, I'll do it, because I can't make costumes. And so they built me a costume, and it was a very nice costume, and I wore it, and no one took me seriously. No one believed I was the voice actor when I had the costume on. So in my position as an industry professional, cosplay is not really acceptable. Like, I can't do it and be taken seriously. However, from the fans' perspective, if they enjoy cosplay, that's great. And if they have a fun time doing it. And I'm always impressed when someone does a good job doing their cosplay. I would say that I'm probably more interested in the psychological desire to do cosplay, which is why I think it has something to do with turning the story you love into a ritual. I have a certain obsession with mythology and mythological storytelling. I do a lot of scholarship. And a ritual is the reenactment of a myth. So mythology is the storytelling aspect of religion. And in order to put ourselves in alignment with the wisdom of that storytelling, we do rituals. So we do the Stations of the Cross, or we do Passover, or we do the Hajj to Mecca, or we do whatever ritual you might do. So by physically reenacting the story, the mythology, we are putting ourselves in alignment with that wisdom tradition. When I look at cosplay at its best, I see people putting themselves, or attempting to put themselves, in alignment with the wisdom tradition of the story they are dressing up as. That is their ritual. And if they are using it as such, that's awesome. Hopefully they are conscious of that. I find that when you are conscious of the ritual, it has more effect. It has more meaning. It has more resonance for you. When people are doing it unconsciously, just sort of reflexively, then I'm not sure they're getting the wisdom. I'm not sure they're actually learning the lesson of the story that they are so subconsciously attracted to. My goal in my scholarship on mythology is to make you consciously aware of what you are subconsciously attracted to. And when you are consciously aware of it, then you can use it, right? When they say, you know, use the force, everyone likes to talk about that. But if you don't really understand what that means on a sort of mystical or cosmological level, then it's just a platitude. It's just words. The other phrase that people forget from Star Wars is my favorite one, Obi-Wan Kenobi's line, in my experience, there is no such thing as luck. right? If you are using the Force, there is no such thing as luck. And that's, I think, what people maybe miss out on. So I love it when I see someone who is doing cosplay with great mastery, because then I go, ah, I think you see the Matrix. I think you can see the Matrix. That's always impressive to me.
Have you ever been able to meet the original creator, or even like, you know, original voice actor of a role you're playing in a certain anime?
Yes, actually. Not too long ago, I went over and did some of my mythology lectures in Japan. This is a year and a half ago now, I think. While I was there, they organized an interview, a joint interview with me and Sugita, who is the voice actor who plays Kyon in The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. So Sugita-san and I sat down and did a joint interview for all the voice acting magazines in Japan, Seiyu Grand Prix and some of the other magazines. I think I've got copies of them somewhere. And they did a photo shoot with the two of us, and it was all fun. And Sugita and I got to talk a lot about anime because Sugita and I are of a similar generation. And so, ironically, we watched a lot of the same cartoons growing up. And so we were able to sort of reminisce about certain versions of Gundam that appealed to him greatly. And I knew the character designers of the shows that he liked, and he was very impressed by that. So we had a great time talking about that stuff. I also got to have dinner with the gentleman who directed Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. We had a wonderful dinner together, and I got to meet a lot of the members of Production IG that worked on Ghost in the Shell and Blood Plus. So yes, every once in a while I am able to meet them.
Let me just say, you have such an elegant way of talking about like story and myth. Like I'm writing my thesis about that right now, actually.
Oh, cool! Excellent.
And have you ever like done any writing or directing of that nature?
I am in the process of finalizing my research so I can start writing my book. I have a number of different presentations that I give at conventions and academic conferences and film festivals. They all came about because I was invited to an academic conference to present every year. And so I bring a new presentation every year. And so I love my presentations. But I realize that I need to put them in a format that is more easily distributed. And so I'm in the process of finalizing some research that I need to do before I can really buckle down and turn my presentations into a book so that more people can have access to the scholarship. Because when I do my presentations, they're great, they're fun, but I don't have to footnote them because we're just moving. I'm doing a presentation, but when it's time for a book, I got to be able to footnote and reference what I'm talking about. So actually, last night I was finishing up a lecture series that I need to study to make sure that I've got some research on stuff. So that is the next thing. For those who are interested in that, I have a website called mythologyandmeaning.com, and that is the online home for all of my scholarship. It describes all of my panels and everything. There's also a trailer for my animation mythology presentations there, and there's an interview that I do with a good friend of mine, Juan Carlos Magnell. He's a big zombie fan. I'm not. I tend to like vampires better. So we do a big conversation about zombies and vampires and talk about the mythological background and the psychological implications of these storytelling tropes. Why do we tell these types of stories over and over again, and how do we rework these archetypes over time as things around us change? So eventually, once I get my book written, I also want to do a web series to put up on the website as well. So that's the place to go, mythologyandmeaning.com, to find out about all my scholarship in that area.
Alright, if you could be the voice actor for any character you want, past, present, or future, of any show, what would it be and why?
Well, it would probably be Alan Shazar in The Vision of Escaflowne. That was the show that inspired me to become a voice actor, and I still think I would sound very good as Alan Shazar, which is funny because the same voice actor who played Alan Shazar also played Shannon in Scrapped Princess, and I've played Shannon as well when I directed that show. I just love that show to pieces, and I would love to work on it. So maybe someday they'll want to redub it, and I can play Alan Shazar. If not that, I would love to play Hana in Tokyo Godfathers. 6'4", drag queen, transvestite, fantastic, with a big deep voice. So yeah, I don't think Tokyo Godfathers has ever been dubbed, to my knowledge. So I would love to play Hana, but Alan Shazar is sort of near and dear to my heart in Essence Flame.
Cosplay NYC.
Kind of took my question. I'm gonna have to go off.
I'm so thorough.
We can come back to you.
Oh.
All right, let's do.
Two questions. I'm a staff member here at CPAC as well.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, two things. One, would you consider returning to CPAC? And two, was turnout bigger than you expected for your panel?
Yes, CPAC's been wonderful. I'd be happy to come back. This is, as long as I'm available, we can work out the details. Yes, as far as turnout, I'm not sure what I expected. Every convention is different. I was told that they were probably expecting somewhere around 2,500 attendees. I don't know if they hit that number or surpassed it. I've been to conventions this size. I also have been to conventions of 45,000 people. It's always a different ball of wax wherever I go and whatever I'm doing. So yeah, I guess. I didn't know. I had no idea what size room I'd be in. I don't know anything. I just show up and dance because I'm your monkey. That's basically what I do.
Free Rise Magazine.
What's your process of getting into character? There's so many different, personalities.
My process of getting into character is I need to figure out what makes the character tick. And specifically, what that means is, how does the character survive? What are their survival tools, their techniques? What tactics will they use to survive? What tactics won't they use? What is hurting them? What are they upset about? And so, if I don't know that, I can't play the character. So usually, because I've worked on so many stories, and patterns repeat, I can look at a character and usually suss them pretty quickly. So like, if you're in my panel, I talked about how after one session of recording Itachi, I knew that Itachi loved his brother in Naruto. Like, it was the only thing that made any sense. He wouldn't spend that much time hating on Sasuke if he didn't care about it. And so I was able to suss Itachi very quickly. In Last Exile, I played the character of Alex Rowe, and he's dark and brooding. And I watched the first 6 episodes, and I said, he's upset about a girl. Obviously, there's some girl he lost or couldn't get or something. It's about a girl, and that's enough. I can work with that. Let's go with that and see what happens. When I started working on the show Witch Hunter Robin, and I was playing Amon, he's also a dark, brooding character. But I couldn't figure out what he was dark and brooding about. It clearly wasn't a girl, because if he was upset about a girl, he wouldn't interact with Robin the way he does. So it wasn't a girl, and so I started watching the show, and I got about 6 episodes in, I couldn't figure it out. 10 episodes, couldn't figure it out. This is the night before I have to go record. I keep watching. I have to go through 24 of 26 episodes before I can figure out what the hell Amon is upset about. It's like 4 in the morning at this point. But there is no point in me going into the studio unless I know what he's upset about. And it turns out he's upset about his mom. He has mother issues. But it's not revealed that that's the case until episode 24. And so I walked into the studio the next morning and I was all blurry-eyed. Like, Crispin, are you okay? Yeah, I know what Amon's upset about. Let's go, let's roll. Like, we got it, we got this, we're going, So I need to know why a character is doing what they're doing, and then what tactics they are willing to use to get what they want. That's what helps me understand a character. If I don't understand that psychological hook of the character, what their itch is, what itch they need to scratch, then the performance will become cliche. It won't have any specificity to it.
Just to tack on to that, since you have such an affinity for mythology, do you ever look back to see where the character's based from, like the original writing or things like that? It's okay if you...
I don't. Here's the thing. I absolutely use my knowledge of mythology to help me understand archetypal characters. Okay, so my understanding of mythology and storytelling tropes helps me help out with things like Wolf's Reign. In Wolf's Reign, all the wolves are searching for paradise, Rakuel. The problem is, paradise in the Abrahamic traditions of Judaism and Christianity and Islam is very different from the paradise of Hinduism, Buddhism, Shinto, and other Asian traditions. And the paradise the wolves are looking for is not the Abrahamic paradise. Because the world that Wolf's Reign takes place in is a very Hindu cosmology. The world is cycling towards an end and then it'll be reborn, the cycles to an end, be reborn. That's a Hindu notion of the universe. It is not a biblical or a Quranic notion. In the biblical Quranic notion, the universe is linear. It has a beginning and it has an end. Boom, we're done. And so when working on Wolf's Reign, the director many times would consult me and she'd say, can we use the word heaven? No, you can't use the word heaven because heaven has a very specific Abrahamic meaning. It's where Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, it's where He is. And if you're going to be with Him, you are with Him in heaven. And that's not where the wolves are going. So is that helping me? Absolutely. Do I read sort of the original manga where an anime might come from? Hell no, I do not. And there's a very specific reason why I don't. In my opinion, the anime needs to stand on its own. And it needs to be understandable by the audience without them having to read the manga. If I read the manga first, I may fill in storytelling problems in the anime by saying, oh, well, if you've read the manga, you know what's going on here, so we don't have to explain this. Oh, no, you do have to explain this, right? And so I don't want to read the manga because then I might accidentally fill in the gaps. I watch the anime, absolutely. I watch the anime if I can before I go and record it because I want to know where the story is going and what we're doing. But I don't want to read the manga. I want to just focus on the anime as an anime and say, this is what I'm seeing. Does this make sense? The only time I will go to the original is if the anime is so confusing to me that I just cannot figure it out. That happened once on Boogie Pop Phantom. On Boogie Pop Phantom, because the story was based on a previous story that I was unaware of, in watching the anime, I still couldn't figure it out. And I had to go to the translator and say, all right, what is this originally based on? And he gave me the sort of source material. And I thought, oh, okay, now that I know the source material, I'm going to have to adapt this show in such a way that you can follow what's going on even though you haven't read the source material. So I'm trying to help the audience then. But most of the time I do not read the manga until the show's over. Then I'll go read the manga.
This is a two-part question. Which character that you voiced did you like voicing, and which character did you hate voicing? Or which was the most stressful to you?
That is different. First thing, like voicing. I like voicing characters in stories that I admire. And so that's always my sort of personal fetish. I also like characters that are subversive. So in Ghost Layer's Ayashi, I play a cross-dressing Shinto priest, because it's anime. So I like that. Alucard is a subversive character. Shizuo in Durarara is sort of a subversive character. These sort of forces of nature, I like to call them. They're just sort of hurricanes. Those are fun to play because I'm a subversive. I like going beyond the boundaries of what is appropriate or socially approved, because I think there's gold to be found beyond the boundaries and to be brought back and shared. Those are the kind of characters I like because those are in the kind of storytelling that does that kind of thing. There is no character that I have played that I have hated, all right? In my opinion, I don't think I could play a character well if I hated them, because I would be spending my time judging them. I must defend my character, even if the character is the villain. So there's a show called Now and Then, Here and There, very rough anime, very brutal dystopian world, and I play a character named Tabul, who is a bastard. He is just a nasty, nasty human being. But I will defend him because I need to play him. If I don't play him well, if Tabul doesn't believe what he's standing for, you as the audience will not enjoy the story, right? So if I'm playing a Nazi, I've got to really believe in the Nazi cause in order for you to be satisfied when I get killed, right? Like you won't be satisfied unless I really believe it. I can't hate the character as I'm playing it. There are plenty of characters that are difficult to play. Alucard is probably the most difficult physically for me to play because he's in the lowest part of my range, which means I need to be incredibly relaxed in order to play him well. But then I have to rip people's heads off, which is not very vocally relaxing. So Alucard is this tightrope I have to walk of being relaxed and then ripping people's head off. And so I'm sweating bullets in the booth playing Alucard. It's very difficult. Everyone's like, isn't it great to play a vampire? No, it's great for you guys watching. It's really hard for me playing it. It's really tough for me. But that's okay, because my concern is for the show. I want the show to be good, and so I will do whatever it takes. I will sweat bullets in the booth if it makes the show come out well, because that's my highest priority. But is it a vacation? Hell no, it's work. The other difficult part for me to play is Kyon from Haruhi Suzumiya. He's not physically difficult, he's psychologically difficult, because he has to stay very casual, he has to stay very just off the cuff, like it's no big deal. When you're in a booth, you've got a microphone this close to you, you've got people yelling at you, you've got beeps, and you've got crazy, all this, and to sound like you're just sort of chilling and hanging is very psychologically taxing. It takes a lot of psychological focus. Also, because the microphone is right here, it picks up every little click and mouth noise, because I have to talk inside Kyon's head. Oh, that can get very psychologically tiring. So those are probably the two most taxing characters that I've played.
Going to as many cons as you do, are there any bizarre or awesome moments that have happened to you at a con?
Yes. Bizarre moments? There are many bizarre moments. I had a woman at a convention in front of like 400 people get up and ask to have sex with me. And you have to ask yourself in that moment, why are you doing this, woman? What is the purpose? Clearly it's not because you're attracted to me and really want to have an intimate relationship with me. Clearly you are grandstanding in front of an audience. Why are you doing this? Does this get you approval? Does this get you notoriety? Does this get you celebrity? Do you think I'm going to say yes? It's very confusing to me, what the point of that is. So yes, there are bizarre stuff that happens like that at conventions all the time. Probably one of the most wonderful experiences I had at a convention. I was at a convention and a woman started walking towards me. She was not a young girl, she was a mature woman. And she had that look in her eyes that she wanted to talk to me. And you have to understand that at a convention, I get that look from people a lot, and I'm never quite sure what that means. Do they want an autograph? Do they want a picture? Do they want, blood? What are they? A clipping of hair? What do they want? I have no idea what they want. And so this woman came up to me, and she said, "Hi, my name is Wendy Peeney. You may know this voice acting friend that I know." And I was like, "I don't know who the hell your voice acting friend is, but you're Wendy Peeney. You are the creator of ElfQuest, one of my favorite comic books from when I was a child. The only comic book I've ever gone hungry for. You are possibly one of the most important creators of my childhood. And you just introduced yourself to me, as if I'm the important one here." Right? And she got it from the moment I said, "You're Wendy Peeney." And she said, "You're one of mine." I said, "Yes, I am. I am one of your children." And she calls us that. She calls us her elf children. And I said, "Yes, I'm one of your elf children. I'm glad we finally met." And we've been close friends ever since, her and her husband Richard. Literally, theirs is the only comic book I ever went hungry for. I literally had a choice one day in high school: do I buy lunch or do I buy ElfQuest? And I went and bought ElfQuest because I had to know how the story ended. Yeah, that's probably one of the most satisfying experiences I've had at a convention.
Stu?
Do people compare you to Japanese voice actor and in any of your shows, and what do they say?
I'm sure people compare me to the original Japanese voice actor. They don't usually do it to my face. They're welcome to do so. The joy of DVDs when they first came out was that you could choose between English and Japanese. Before that, we watched anime on VHS tapes, and back then you had to make a decision. You either bought the sub or the dub, and there was a whole big war about it. Now I think that war is ridiculous. You click a button and you switch to whatever you want to listen to. What does it matter, Watch it in Japanese, watch it in English, watch it in French.
Mag.com.